It is June 12th, 2019. We are in Boston, Massachusetts for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals between the Boston Bruins and the St. Louis Blues. Now you might remember how the story ended for the Blues, but to truly grasp the significance of this moment, the script that was written for the Blues is something out of a Hollywood movie. To have this chance in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, let alone to be in the postseason in general, it's magic, and it's why we love the game. Now let's rewind it back. Up until this point in their franchise, the Blues have made the playoffs 41 times in their first 49 years of existence. One of the most consistently good teams in the National Hockey League. Since they joined the league in the 1967 NHL expansion, the Blues had reached the postseason more times than any other non-original six team. The Blues also famously maintained a 25-season playoff streak from 1980 to 2004, tied for the third longest streak in NHL history. In their first 3 years of existence, they made the Stanley Cup Finals, only to lose all 3 times. And of course, everyone remembers the third time, the famous goal scored by Bobby Orr. And that was the last time they played in the Stanley Cup Final, 1970. Let's bring it back to 2018. The season prior, the Blues missed the playoffs by a single point. The Blues and their fans were desperate for something to finally pan out. In that offseason, they decided to make some moves. A huge trade on July 1st with the Buffalo Sabres acquiring forward Ryan O'Reilly in exchange for Patrick Berglund, Vladimir Sobotka, the young Tage Thompson, a first and second round pick, to also go along with some key free agent signings of Tyler Bozak and Pat Maroon. The Blues went all in. On paper, they had an excellent team. By the time the 2018 offseason drew to a close, General Manager Doug Armstrong hadn't just tinkered with the roster. He had rebuilt it for a deep run. Adding O'Reilly to their existing pieces was everything they were hoping it would be to get them to the next level. But as the puck dropped on the 2018-2019 campaign, the inexplainable happened. By November 19th, the team was a shell of itself, sitting at a dismal 7-9-3 record, leading the firing of head coach Mike Yeo. But the bleeding didn't stop there. Under interim coach Craig Berube, the slide continued into the new year. On the morning of January 3rd, 2019, the St. Louis Blues were not just a bad hockey team. They were the worst team in the National Hockey League, sitting in last place in the standings. 51 years of history, the longest championship drought in the sport, seemed destined to add another chapter of misery. The math was simple. Teams in last place in January don't make the playoffs. They certainly don't win at all. But in a small bar in South Philadelphia, a spark was about to ignite. There is always something insane that you hear about during a championship run, and this certainly is one of them. On January 6th, a handful of Blues players walked into a bar in Philadelphia to watch an NFL playoff game between the Eagles and the Bears. The infamous double doink. Every time a commercial break hit, the DJ would play a 1982 disco hit from Laura Branigan, Gloria. Now I wish I could play you this song, but of course, for copyright reasons. According to Blues defenseman at the time, Joel Edmondson, everyone in the bar kept telling the DJ to keep playing this song. And as the Blues players sat back and watched, they felt something that they hadn't felt in a long time. Pure joy. So that is when they decided, after every win, that would be their go-to song. The legend of the 2019 Blues isn't just about a song, it's about the man who gave them a reason to play it. But to hear that song, they needed a win, something that they had felt impossible to achieve for months. Desperate for a spark, Coach Craig Berube turned to a 25-year-old rookie who had spent 5 seasons grinding in the minors, Jordan Binnington. This is where everything really turned around for the Blues. Making his first career NHL start on January 7th against the Flyers, he stopped all 25 shots he faced, leading the Blues to a 3-0 shutout and the first of many victory dances to Laura Branigan's hit. Binnington's cool-as-ice demeanor changed the DNA of the team overnight. He went 13-1-1 with 4 shutouts in his first 15 starts, dragging the Blues from the NHL basement toward the playoffs. He would finish the regular season with a league-leading 1.89 goals against average, proving he wasn't just a temporary fix. He was the savior the franchise had been waiting 52 years to find. With Gloria blasting in the locker room and Jordan Binnington standing tall in the crease, the St. Louis Blues didn't just start winning, they became unstoppable. What began as a desperate climb out of the basement evolved into a historic 11-game winning streak that spanned from January 23rd to February 19th of that year. During this nearly month-long tear, the Blues outscored their opponents 46-18. They weren't just squeaking by, they were dominating elite competition, including a statement win over the league-leading Tampa Bay Lightning. The streak reached its fever pitch on February 19th against the Toronto Maple Leafs. With the game tied in overtime, Ryan O'Reilly buried the winner just 34 seconds into the extra frame, clinching a new franchise record and officially signaling to the NHL that the Blues were no longer a basement dweller. They were a threat. While the Blues were fighting their way out of the NHL basement, they found a deeper purpose in an 11-year-old girl named Layla Anderson. Layla was battling a rare life-threatening autoimmune disease called HLH, and her fearless spirit became the team's ultimate North Star. As her health began to improve following a bone marrow transplant, the team's fortunes on the ice seemed to mirror her recovery. By the time the streak finally ended on February 21st in Dallas, the damage was done. St. Louis had vaulted from 31st place to a comfortable playoff position in just 27 days. The dream that had nearly died in November was now a reality. Fueled by a rookie goalie, a 1980s pop hit, their biggest fan in Layla, and the longest winning streak in the 52-year history of the Blue Note. The Stanley Cup playoffs is always a war of attrition, and for a team that had already climbed out of the NHL's basement, every round was a test of will. It started with a physical clash against the Winnipeg Jets, in a series where the road team won the first 4 games. The Blues found their rhythm. Jaden Schwartz emerged as the early hero, netting a natural hat-trick in the Game 6 clincher to send Winnipeg home and the Blues to the second round. And then came Dallas, a series defined by one of the most stressful Game 7s in franchise history. For over 80 minutes, Stars goalie Ben Bishop was a brick wall, making a career-high 52 saves. But in the second overtime, St. Louis native Pat Maroon lived out every kid's driveway dream. He jammed home a rebound off a Robert Thomas shot, igniting the Enterprise Center and propelling the hometown hero and his team into the Western Conference Final. The final hurdle was the San Jose Sharks, a series that nearly unraveled in Game 3 due to one of the most controversial missed calls in NHL history, an unreviewable hand pass that led to a Sharks overtime winner. But instead of breaking, the Blues got angry. They outscored San Jose 12-2 over the next 3 games. By the time the final horn sounded in Game 6, the Blues had clinched a 5-1 victory in their first trip to the Stanley Cup Final in 49 years. Waiting for them was a familiar foe from 1970, the Boston Bruins. The stage was set for a rematch, half a century in the making. The Stanley Cup Final was everything the hockey world expected, a heavy, bruising 7-game war. The Blues and Bruins traded blows like heavyweight fighters, with St. Louis taking a 3-2 series lead, only to see Boston force a winner-take-all Game 7 back at the TD Garden. For a franchise that had never won a Cup final game before this series, the pressure was immense. But beneath that tension was a reality that felt absolutely crazy. Just 161 days earlier, this same team was dead last in the entire NHL. To go from the league's basement on January 3rd to a winner-take-all Game 7 for the Stanley Cup in June wasn't just improbable. It was a worst-to-first reversal unlike anything professional sports had ever seen. So back to where we began this story. June 12th, Game 7, Stanley Cup Finals. In the of play, the Blues struck. Ryan O'Reilly tipped in a shot to make it 1-0, followed by a gorgeous backhand goal from captain Alex Pietrangelo with just 8 seconds left in the period. capitalizing on a now infamous line change by Brad Marchand. The Blues never looked back. Goals from Braden Shen and Zach Sanford in the third period put the game out of reach. And as the final seconds ticked away, the 52-year-old wait officially ended. From last place in the league on January 3rd to Stanley Cup champions on June 12th, the most improbable worst to first run in the history of professional sports was complete. And with Layla in attendance for Game 7, when the final buzzer sounded, she was on the ice hoisting the Stanley Cup alongside her boys. A reminder that some victories are bigger than the game itself. If you like this video and would like to see more content like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support throughout the growth of this channel will certainly not go unnoticed.